A look at Father's Day. All that and more coming up now on Joy in the City, True Stories. Joy in the City is a program highlighting people and organizations that are having an impact on our city. All too often, we hear about the problems and the dysfunction in our culture, but we are coming with a different approach as we take a look at the good things that are going on right here in our community. I'm Lindsay Irvin, and you're about to see what God is doing in our city. We want to thank our program sponsors, Park Home, for the donation of furniture used in our studio, Made by Vogel for the contribution of many props in our studio, and our platinum sponsor, Harry's Construction, for their ongoing support of Joy in the City. Our theme this month is focused on fathers. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 1 in 4 children live in a household without a father. Statistics also show that involved dads improve their children's overall emotional and social well-being. Here to share with us today is Dave Taylor from The Door in Bellwood. Dave's ministry works with kids who find themselves in need of a family.
Well, thanks, Dave, for spending a few moments with us. Joy in the City, we've interviewed you many times with different organizations that you've been a part of, but today it's going to be a little bit different because we're going to talk about fathers, matter of fact, more specifically, fatherlessness. So if you could talk to us a little bit about your experience with the different organizations that you oversee and the impact that fathers or the lack thereof has had on what you do.
Well, I started out as a teenager working with an inner city ministry, and working with an inner city ministry, particularly an African American population and Hispanic population. In the 80s and 90s, the fatherless rate was growing from 20, 30, 40 to over 50%, where it's at today. And then as I moved, went to Bible school, moved into church ministry, and then with The Door, realizing that in our suburban communities and in our suburban churches and areas, the same problem that was in the inner city 20 years ago is now, I've been preaching for years, sounding the alarm, it's coming. We have a fatherless generation that is coming up through our programs and our churches, and we're not equipped to deal with it. The programs, the curriculums, the things that I saw were not designed to meet those needs. They were based on having an intact family that brought you to church, you know what I mean? And that's not the majority. I was looking, we just had a 2020 census, and one of the things that alarmed me is in school-age kids in 1st through 12th grade, this is 2020 statistics, 39% do not have their dad at home. So the impact of one, almost 40% of all of our young people not having their dad in their life, there's a pain and a problem and all kinds of issues that come with that. I was reading in Genesis this week the story of Jacob and Esau and how their father's blessing meant so much to them. And one didn't value it much until it was stolen. And I think that's where America is at with our fathers. We didn't value them until they've been stolen, until they've been missing, until they've been robbed. And now we have a generation crying out, is there not a blessing for me, Dad? You know, where was my, and God meant for us to have fathers. He meant for them to first be a protector. Like, who watches me? Who cares for me? Who's protecting guardian, keeping me from doing evil and keeping evil from getting to me? The rates of child abuse have increased. The rates of violence against children have increased, and that's all related to dad being 40% are gone, all right? And there are some fathers who abuse their kids, but the number one abuser of children statistically is a mother's boyfriend, somebody who's not a child's biological father who lives there and doesn't have the same heart and bond. There's some wonderful stepdads. Nothing I say today is about bashing a dad who's struggling, trying, or you're a step-in dad trying to help some kids. Man, I love you. God bless you. We need more of you. But I'm just talking about reality, how it is out there. A father's role, where's my provision? The government can't print enough checks to cover the missing dads. Sure. And a dad's provision is not just about a check. It's about the mentoring that's supposed to be there, teaching a young person about life, everything from handling money to handling a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or your education. I mean, the statistics show you are, I think it's 279% more likely to be in poverty if your dad is not in your home. And we got 40% of kids in school today that are experiencing that. We're headed for a real crisis.
Now, if you have a situation or organization like you do, that you're not just looking at statistics,
Yeah.
And reading reports, you're actually dealing with this day in and day out. What are some of the things that has broken your heart that you're seeing because of a fatherlessness issue in a home? What are some of the things that you're having to deal with in day-to-day situations?
Well, there's two things that I see reactions. First, we'll start with young men, the young men that I work with. First reaction is complete passivity. I don't try, I don't care, I don't value anything because nobody's motivating me, all right? And nobody's motivating me, and nobody's teaching me, nobody's asking me to do chores, nobody's teaching me to support what little, support the family with what I can do around the house and things like that. And so we have employers and things who'd like to hire kids, and they're like, I can't get a kid who's interested in actually working, who will show up, who cares about a future. And then try to talk to them about God, talk to them about a father who never leaves, never forsakes, always provides, wants to bless them, has their best interest at heart. That's fairy tales to them, because I've never seen a dad that doesn't leave. My dad won't even show up for his visits. My dad won't send a check. My dad forgot my birthday again. Those kinds of things is what I see. And in our young ladies, first in the guys it was passivity. The second is aggression. We see violence on a scale. It was in our inner cities, now it's reaching our small town streets. The anger and rage in a young man who knows somebody was supposed to teach me. I'm not prepared for life, and I'm angry and I'm frustrated. I don't know how to process the experiences that I have. I don't know how to learn and study the things I'm supposed to know. And at 18, magically, I should get a job and know everything and be ready for life. That's hard enough if you do have a dad, okay?
Sure.
But if you don't, the anger and rage and what we see in our gang violence, and all of those things is very statistically tied to fatherlessness. In our young ladies, the mental health issues that come from being unfathered are exponentially raised when a young lady does not have a father in her home. The rates of teen pregnancy and out-of-wedlock birth skyrockets for young women that do not have a dad in the home. And abuse and violence that's committed against women. There's all the jokes about the overprotective dad, but better to have an overprotective dad or a protective dad at all than nobody to protect you.
Sure.
And to let you out there. And two, the lack of confidence there in education and going on to study. Dads usually motivate, honey, you can do that, you can accomplish. That's that blessing and praising and encouraging, and it's missing. And it's devastating a generation of young people.
What is something the faith community rising up, and the Bible talks about taking care of the orphans and the widows, and understanding that it may not be an orphan total, but in a sense, without a father, there's an orphan spirit to some degree. What is something the faith community can do to help alleviate some of this, diminish some of these issues that you see it's so regular?
Well, depending on your faith community, it's going to be hard up to get it done, because the majority of our leaders, and God bless them, in most churches today are who are our Sunday school teachers, who are our kids' workers. It's all the ladies. And we need more men to step in. And I had this in my life. My dad was there, but he worked 2 jobs and was often disconnected. And so there were step-in fathers at church who stepped in, taught me camping stuff, taught me Bible verses, taught me to love God, taught me how to work in a sound booth or, serve in church. And I would just say, every man in every congregation, if you would just step into one kid's life and offer one thing. You don't have to take over and be their father for everything, but take over one thing and go, I could teach you this, I could teach you that. The confidence it built in me as a young man, the heart that it gave me, the joy that there's a man who's interested in helping me. I've got somebody to process problems with. I've got a friend, or I know something now that I didn't know, and I feel confident to face life. The faith community needs step-in fathers. Step into a kid's life. Step into a young lady's life and show them that men can be protecting and providing and mentoring and blessing. Bless kids with your words. Even if you don't have much to share, say something positive, say something encouraging. You see a young man, church sits by himself. I see you every week coming faithfully. I am so encouraged. You encourage me. Bless that young man or young woman who's trying to find faith without an intact family around them.
Well, Dave, this is a heart-wrenching issue. This isn't something that flip of a switch is going to solve it. And I know this is something that you deal with day in and day out. A lot of times in churches that have intact families, they may not know or be aware totally, which is why I wanted to pull you in for this show, because I feel that you can share from a man, a father who sees this all the time. What are some things that we can do? And I appreciate your time today. And we'll just pray that people in the faith community will step up. As you said, that's my prayer. They'll see this, they'll hear this, and they'll step in as opportunities permit.
Thank you.
If you have a personal story or a testimony that you would be willing to share with our community, we would love to chat with you about it. Please contact us at 814-944-1948 or by email at stories@jointhecity.org.
Today's Platinum sponsor is Harry's Construction, whose motto is, if you can dream it, we can create it. Recently opening Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center so you, the consumer, can see examples of the variety of services provided by the team at Harry's Construction. Regardless of the project size, Harry's team approaches each project as if it is his own home. Be sure to visit Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center at 114 Main Street in Bellwood. You can also visit their website to see pictures of home improvement projects over the years. Thanks again to Harry Halk and the team for supporting Joy in the City.
Made by Vogel is a father and son business that produces high-quality handmade wooden products such as cutting boards, bowls, bottle stoppers, and more. Products for sale can be found on their Etsy site or in downtown Altoona at the Clay Cup. You can't go wrong buying from Made by Vogel.
As we continue today, a few thoughts from a Joy in the City contributor, Kelly Ferguson, as she shares the Word with Kelly.
Today on The Word with Kelly, we are going to look at the word parents and the role that we play. Now let me begin with saying, I am no expert when it comes to parenting. Just ask my oldest. Now, I do want to ask you a question that I saw posted the other day. What's the most difficult part about being a parent? Without a shadow of a doubt, it's the kids. And isn't that the truth? But yet, it's the desire of our hearts to be parents. As I was studying this word, I realized just how much more that I need to be studying this particular subject. You see, I love to read books, but actually do very little reading on the subject of parenting. And I'm seeing that this is something that needs to be added to my list. If anyone has any recommendations, please send them my way. Obviously, besides the Word of God, as that needs to be our first go-to resource. For those of you listening that do not know, I have a 15-year-old son who's almost 16, and then a 6-year-old son. And there's a very big age difference between the two, and they are completely different. And also, well, they're boys. which I seem to know very little about. Parenting is hard for sure, but it's also the greatest blessing, and it can be so rewarding. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." I believe that the central, most fundamental education that our children receive must be given to them from their parents. There's no outsourcing for this. Parenting must be the priority. Now, that's not to say that we don't lean on our church, on our family, and close friends for advice, and even the schools at times to help along the way. But the foundation must be laid by us, the parents. You see, we are the ones that must teach them how to love, how to trust, to obey, and to walk in God's ways. We must parent our children from a place of love. They must know that we love them, but also know that God comes first in our life and that our spouse comes second and then them. They need to know this biblical principle, but also in understanding it, they also know that we love them very deeply and that it's not just a feeling that will come and go. Nowhere did I mention in this equation about loving yourself, because all of these need to come before that. We must be willing to put our children and their needs above ours, ahead of our wants. When it comes to our children, we can tend to replace God's perfect law with a sorry human second best. Somehow God's ways get replaced with the way that we would like to do things. And sadly, we can get driven for our craving for affirmation, control, success, and reputation. And so then we make selfish, impatient, and angry demands on our children. At times, treating them like servants who exist to lessen our load of daily chores and to make our lives more comfortable. Now, please understand, I'm not saying we don't give our children chores. Chores are a good thing and they build responsibility. But we must realize this fact, that our children were not created or given to us for our sake, but for God's. He has a mighty plan for each child. He has a purpose for them that most likely has nothing to do with what your flesh would like. A little honesty here. My oldest loved baseball when he was younger. I mean, he was that kid that after a 2-hour practice would come home and practice more. And because of this love, he started to ask if he could try out for a travel team. Well, without really seeking God in this, we did do travel teams, private lessons, personal trainers, and a lot more. I would put him on as many teams as I could, and I would spend money like crazy. I thought, well, that's what the other parents are doing. I want to give my son that same opportunity. I want my son to have this dream and maybe even get a college scholarship from it. And of course, I love watching him play. The thing is that recently he sat down and told us that he doesn't really enjoy it that much anymore. To be honest, this really broke my heart to hear. What once was this little kid's dream, I have now pushed into possibly something that just wasn't meant to be. And at some point became my dream more than his. Now I'm saying all this to say I should have been seeking the Lord in every decision and then talking to Jax about it. And for as much time as I put into baseball, I started to neglect instructing him in other areas of his life because this seemed to take priority. There's nothing wrong with kids pursuing dreams. But remember, I said we must lay a foundation, and that foundation must always go back to God. I've let things like this slide in the name of baseball. And it's not enough just to say it and teach them, but we must show them through our actions and how we live. Has your child seen you spending time in the Word and prayer? Do they hear you speak about God? What do they see you getting excited about? How do they see you with your spouse? Have they heard you ask for forgiveness? Okay, as we all know, this is a big one that I need to work on, and I'm trying. But have they seen you help those in need and give of your time and or money? Do they see you worshiping on Sundays and then see you be a mess the rest of the week? What are our children seeing? Besides school, most of their time is spent with us. And they are watching. Oh, believe me, they are. And more than I would like at times, because let's be honest here, we do get it wrong, and we do make mistakes. But that's the great thing about our God, because He wants to restore, and He is so willing to help mold us into the parents that He wants us to be, if we just ask Him. Listen, this is a journey, and we must persevere on this journey. Deuteronomy 6:5-7 says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts, and impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up." So in other words, pretty much all the time. So how do we do this? Well, I believe one of the best ways is through family devotions. Because we have such an age difference between our two boys, we actually use 2 different devotionals. Now, these don't have to be long, but consistency is key and something I'm trying to work on. We found a great one that we're using for our 15-year-old called Walk by Faith by Andy Dooley. I highly recommend it. Now, I've struggled finding something I really like for my youngest, so I started something new, and I'll have to let you know if it's a good one. But if anyone has recommendations for any, why don't you send them my way? Another thing we do that I think is great is having family dinners as often as possible so that we can just sit and talk. And then Troy also will pray with each kid as they head to school, and then he will ask them to pray. And if you guessed correctly, I'm still in bed. But be consistent in going to church so that they see the importance of this. Talk about the sermons. Ask your kids, hey, what did you learn in Sunday school today? And then when there's something that they are fearing, worrying about, why not talk about it and then pray? Let them see your faith in every situation. When you see how God has worked in someone else's life, why not make sure you tell your kids about it? Share testimonies. And of course, I'm sure there are other ways. But the most important thing as parents is that we are consistent and even repetitive in our instruction. I mean, think about it. How much repetition do we need from the Lord ourselves? We are born with a bent, and that bent is decidedly away from God. So our children need instruction and correction, which needs to come from us. And that comes through verbal correction, and yes, at times it will come through physical correction. Now you may say, oh no, I can't spank my children, and I get it. It's hard to do. But as a Christian parent, when done in love and not in anger, it is very biblical. Proverbs 29:17 says, "Discipline your children, and they will give you peace, and they will bring you the delights you desire." And Proverbs 22:15 says, "Folly is bound up in a heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far away." First of all, I'm sure we desire peace in our homes. And secondly, I don't want my children to be full of recklessness, folly, so I need to bring correction. But always comes from a place of love. The last thing I'd like to talk about is knowing your child. Our children are unique, and we must recognize this so that we don't run the risk of squashing our children. The goal is not to turn our kids into many versions of ourselves. I'm pretty sure one of me is enough anyways. Our children are not our second chance at our best life. They are unique, and they have unique gifts and desires. And part of our job as a parent is to help them discover these giftings and to steward those things. My oldest is strong-willed. He's not the most outgoing. He desires respect, and he likes to take on a leadership role at times. And I would say that his love language is quality time. Which, by the way, the book 5 Love Languages of a Child by Gary Chapman is a great book because it's important that we know what our kids desire most from us, because often it's not what we desire most. There's also one for spouses in case you're interested. Now, my youngest is very outgoing. He makes friends anywhere he goes. He apologizes very easily. He loves to help, and his love language is words of affirmation. Now, 2 kids growing up in the same house, but so very different. Probably one more like me and one more like my husband. And no, I don't need you to guess which is which. But here's the thing. Neither is wrong, but both need to be stewarded in the right direction. And that's why as parents, we must recognize what giftings God has placed in them. Strong-willed? Sensitive? How do they respond to difficult situations? How do they respond to discipline? What do they love to do? And are you, as a parent, encouraging those things in them? We must be learning our child so that we can train them well. We must be aware and not get so busy with life that we miss what is their gifting. Parenting is work, yes, but with many, many wonderful, sweet moments. It can be exhausting and it may even feel at times overwhelming. Am I being the parent that they need? Am I raising my kids to be good, responsible, loving adults? Well, the saying goes, the days are long, but the years are short. And that couldn't be more true. But in the end, God is just asking that we do our best. His mercies are new today, and we can rest on His shoulders with grace to start over. He has not given up on you, and He's a God that restores, and He's a God of new beginnings. He wants to bless your home. He wants to bless your kids, and He wants to help you be a better mom or a better dad. So just ask Him. In the end, it comes down to this: pray. Our kids so desperately need our prayers, and we need to be consistently praying for them, for their hearts and their mind. And then we trust God. We leave them in His hands. Yes, we do our part, but ultimately we must realize they were never ours, but they are His. So ask yourself today, what am I raising my kids for? I know that I want to raise my kids to love God with their whole heart and to serve Him all their days. And I won't give up praying this over their life. Won't you have a blessed day?
Kick off summer by joining faith-filled believers from all across the city for Saturate Altoona. This is a free summer worship series unifying believers throughout our community. You're invited to join worshipers every Sunday night during the month of June at Heritage Plaza, beginning at 6:30 p.m. You'll hear from 12 different faith leaders of several denominations and musicians from many churches. You don't want to miss Saturate Altoona every Sunday night in June at Heritage Plaza in downtown Altoona.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you for watching Joy in the City, True Stories. Let me encourage you to watch other episodes of people and organizations having an impact on our community on ABC 23 at 5:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. every Sunday. You can also catch us each week on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Until then, be encouraged because God is moving in our city.